Okay, this is Patrick Smith. It is August 17th, 2023, and this is an accessibility evaluation of a new HTML document format provided by the archive. Um, I am going to be using NVDA. I'm currently on Windows 10. And the browser I'll be using is Google Chrome. Before we start my screen is already inverted, so any comments or whatever on contrast will be, you know, probably using the inverted color as a basis, but, I may switch back and forth. I want to start with, what people usually do when they hit a new web page, which is navigating by heading. And then I'll try other things like landmarks, links, lists, and so on. Then I'll give some thoughts on like sizes and contrasts, if I have any. And I will also check out submitting an issue. Seems like there's a button that allows you to submit an issue, so we're going to try that out. All right. So let's do navigate by heading, which is pretty important because people usually, not always, but frequently do first.
Abstract heading level 6.
Okay, so
investigating the cubing as a reconstruction of streamer self-presentation identity performance and gender heading level 1.
So that's the name of the paper, and it's pretty long. So let's hear it one more time. And it is heading level 1, so that's good. So you're supposed to only have one heading level 1 on the page, and it's supposed to essentially be the title of the page. And I'm also gonna just check and see what the title of the HTML, the title element in the metadata of the HTML page is.
Investigating the cubing as a reconstruction of streamer self-presentation identity performance and gender Google Chrome.
Okay, so it looks like the heading level 1 is the same as the metadata title tag, so that's good. The metadata title tag might sometimes have, it might say like the archive or something as well, but it's kind of good that those align. And I also just want to see if there's anything above the first heading. I don't think there's navigation elements here, but I guess we'll.
Heading level 1 investigating the heading level 1
Yeah, so it
investigating the
looks
cubing as a
like as currently constructed, this page doesn't have any navigation. The heading level 1 is the first element that you encounter on the page. So, and in a normal website, this would be a nav bar and maybe like a skip to content link, etc. But I think this is as a beta. We're not seeing that, which is fine. So let's go through and get a little sense of how the navigation is laid out, how the headings are laid out. So I'm just gonna you hitting the H button on NVDA just in the browse mode just to go through the various headings on the page.
Abstract heading level 6.
Okay, so abstract heading level 6. That does seem to skip down a lot of levels. So we're going from 1 to 6, but let's just keep
1.
going.
Introduction heading level 2.
Heading level 2, that's pretty much exactly what you would expect. Heading level 2.
2. Related work heading level 2.
Okay.
2.1. Self-presentation in social media heading level 3.
So now we've gone from a level 2 heading to level 3 heading. That makes sense because this one seems to be numbered
2. Related work heading level 2.
2. So we can, if we move by word.
Work. 2. Related. Dot. 2.
2.
Dot. E. L.
So we have 2, and the sounds like the navigation, the headings are laid out by numbers, and then as it gets more specific, you get decimal
2.1. Self-presentation in social media heading level 3.
So semantically, it makes sense for the title of the page to be heading level 1, then each of the main numerical headings, like 1, 2, etc., to be heading level 2, and then for any further decimals, so 2.1 would be heading level 3, and then presumably if there was a 2.1.1 or a 2.1.2, that would be heading level 4, I'm guessing. So
2.2. Self-presentation in avatar-mediated systems heading level 3.
So that's heading level 3, so that makes sense.
2.3. Live streaming as a new medium of 3. Methodology heading level 2.
Okay, so that made sense. Now we're back to heading level 2.
3.1. Interviews heading level 3.
And actually, let's just go ahead and navigate all the way down by heading, all the heading level 2s.
4. Findings heading level 2.
So we have 4, we should have 5
5. Discussion heading level 2. 4.5. Discussion heading 6. Conclusion heading level 2.
Okay.
References heading level 2.
And then actually, it looks like the references are also a heading level 2, which I think actually makes sense in this context.
No next heading at level 2.
And that's it. Okay, cool. So heading back to the top of the page.
Beta. Beta. Heading level 1 investigating VTubing as a recon.
Okay, so let's just check out the heading level 3s really quickly.
2.1.cell, 2.2.2.3.3.1. 3.2, 3.3.4.1. The construction of a virtual identity.
I just
Heading
want
level
to see
3.
if there's any heading level 4s on the page.
4.1.1. Construction
Yeah,
process. Heading
okay.
level 4.
So in heading the
No previous heading at level 4.
in the level 4 in the fourth heading, which is called
4. Findings. Heading level 2.
findings. There is another heading level, like depth. And it does use heading level 4. So that's great. The headings really seem to be solid, except for the abstract. The abstract seems to be kind of incorrect. It probably should be a heading level 2.
Heading level 1 investigating VTubing as a reconstruction of streamers. Abstract. Heading level 6.
Yeah, heading level 6. And I just want to check if there's any other 6s on the page. I'm guessing there aren't.
No next heading at level 6.
Yeah.
No previous heading at level 6.
So really
abstract heading level 6.
Abstract. So the abstract should probably be heading level 2, not heading level 6. Okay.
VTubers or virtual YouTubers are live streamers who create streaming content using animated 2D or 3D virtual avatars. In recent years, there has been a significant increase in the number of VTuber creators and viewers across the globe. This practice has drawn research attention into topics as viewers' engagement, behaviors, and perceptions.
Seems
However,
like it's a paragraph,
more identity.
so I'm not seeing a lot of like links or other kinds
and
of
performance flexibility than
I'm
traditional
curious
stream.
how the how references are handled. So we're gonna check that out in a minute. I guess we could check that out now. I'm kind of curious to investigate that part. So let's try it out. So I'm gonna navigate by link on the page with the K key in browse mode in NVIDIA. So I'm hitting K.
2014 link.
If you're using JAWS, it would be the U key for unvisited links. You could, if you were testing it on there. So looks like.
Link.
Okay, so looks like the author is linked, and I kind of want to go ahead and click through on that and see what happens.
Mail window. Add an account
Okay,
window.
looks like
Mail
you can
calendar
email
accounts window.
It's a mail to link, but it seems to work.
System
so
menu.
good.
Mail window. Investigating VTubing. Link.
Okay, I'm assuming it's going to be the same for the other authors.
2014 link.
Okay, so looks like in the citations, the year is linked.
High-fidelity audio/video stream with.
That sounds like it might be like.
Link to high-fidelity audio/video.
I wonder if that's APA.
Link 2014 right parent. High-fidelity audio/video stream with low-fidelity text-based IRC chat channels left parent Hamilton et al.
Hamilton et al. Yeah, so you got the author, then the year, which I believe is APA, or like APA-like, and it kind of makes sense because it sounds like it's maybe like a sociological paper or something like that, or maybe media studies or something. And so it looks like the year alone is linked. I don't know if I have a strong opinion on that. I mean, you might want to. It may make sense to make the anchor text, right, the text that comes up on the link, to be not just the year, but like the whole citation. So Hamilton 2013. I don't feel super strongly about that. I don't know if there's precedent for that. And one thing I am curious about is whether or not the site HTML element was used in these citations. So I'm going to quickly look at the code.
HTTPS
and it's going to be lazy and
selection.
Site.
Result 1 of 87.
Can't use the AT. So it looks like there's a bunch of these. And I'm just going to use my low vision for this because this page doesn't navigate very well in NVIDIA. Okay, yeah, it looks like they are using site elements, or there are a lot of instances of the site element, so I'm going to give the assumption that the site element is used here.
Result 5 of 80.
So
Result 7
imagine
investigating.
They are using it, so that's great. That's actually fairly rare to encounter someone using the site element, so that's great. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with the links and just see if there's any other links in here that aren't citations.
2014, 1909, 2014, 2018
Sounds like
link.
they're mostly years.
V-link, 2009, 2018 visited, 2018 link.
So what I'm going to do is hop to the bottom of the page and then try from the bottom.
Beta. Heading level 1 investigating VTubing as a reconstruction of streamer self. 02:38 on August 17, 2023. Investigating VTubing as a
email. I guess my laptop setting doesn't really want to do
VTubers
it,
or virtual YouTubers are archive 13-c at my.chicken.city.edu.hk link. 2014 link.
Okay.
2014 link.
It sounds like
2007
mostly
link.
years.
1999
Not coming up with any,
2000 left bracket ending of right bracket link. 2008 left bracket ending of right bracket link.
End.
Left bracket ending of right bracket link. 2014 link. Left bracket ending of right bracket link.
Let's get some context on that.
Avatar mediated identities in various virtual worlds. Left newsfeed to and Fedorevskaya. Link left bracket ending of right bracket right paren. For example, newsfeed
okay,
to
so that is a link. I'm not sure what it is.
Avatar newsfeed to and Fedorevskaya. Link left bracket ending of right bracket right paren. For example, newsfeed to found that second.
Left bracket, right bracket, end. I mean, it could maybe be malformed. I'm gonna go slowly here.
Avatar mediated identities in various virtual worlds. Left paren Burkett dot link 2016 Semilin and Wang. Link 2014 Semi. 2016 link. 2014 link. Left bracket ending of right bracket link. Ding of right bracket out of link right paren. Link left bracket n.
Yeah, I'm hearing a left bracket, so maybe a malformed link.
Out of link Fedorevskaya.
Yeah.
Link left bracket n.
I wonder where it goes.
List with 98 items. Newsfeed.
Because it does go, yeah, it may just, it looks like it's not an external link, it goes to the references.
Ding of right bracket not presenting identity in a virtual newsfeed to and Fedorevskaya left paren left.
Okay. Okay, but it seems like
2023 link content info and market ATX left no next link,
which makes sense.
No next link.
So let's go to the references and play around with that because I'm curious. Also seeing some floating text on the side that I can't read there, but I'll investigate that in a minute. But let's check out the references. So
no next heading.
So it looks like it's not focused correctly.
References heading level 2.
Okay, there we go. References. So when we go down past
list
references,
with 98 items, left paren, 1 right paren.
List with 98 items. So that's actually pretty great. We have a list with 98 items. I'm assuming they're going to be each a reference. So let's just go through the list items. I'm going to go through the items by pressing I.
Amaria Tal. Left paren 2019 right paren Tofi Kamarit Sarita Skolivek and Daniel Romero 2019 self-declared throwaway accounts on Reddit : how platform affordances and shared non-memorable parenting disclosure and support proceedings of the ACM on human-computer interaction 3
so
CSCW left paren.
I hear the author and then I hear the title.
Argyle and Dean left paren 1965 right paren Michael Argyle and Janet Dean 1900 and Wood left paren 2001 Gardner and Richards left paren 2000.
So something that occurs to me, and I'm using, my low vision, I can see that there are 2 groupings here, and I'm assuming this is the author. So it seems like those are kind of their own semantic elements, so maybe it would make sense to group those in some sense. I'm not sure what semantic element I would choose for that. I think there are different ways of doing it. Maybe a table would be a little too heavyweight. But table is, I guess, a possibility, but I think I like the list that they use. I kind of like that you're using lists, but I wonder if it makes sense to maybe group the author and the title in some way under the list. Maybe a detail is a possibility. That's one HTML element that might be a possibility, but there are probably others that may make sense. So now, on the other hand, I think this is quite good. So just having each entry be a list is pretty great. One other thing, and this isn't accessibility. Oh, that's interesting. I had it on content info, so I want to check that out in a minute. But it seems like there aren't links in the site references at the bottom to go back to the text where it was used. There may be issues with that, especially if maybe there are multiple citations to the same source. But yeah, if maybe it may make sense to be able to go back to the previous citation. Now, yeah, on the other hand, if they don't map cleanly from citation to reference, like if multiple citations are to a single reference, then yeah, maybe you can't do a link that goes back to the top. But depends on how it was handled. Yeah, I want to see what this is that I'm on right now.
2002 content info and market ATX left bracket logo right bracket link.
Content info.
List with 98 items, 1 dash out of list content info and mark generated on Friday 2114:52:30 2023 link ATX graphic left bracket logo right list with 98 items.
So I'm at the list. I'm going to go to right after the list and see what's what element is right after the list.
Content info landmark generated on Fragile 2114:52:32
Yeah, so it looks like
left bracket logo right bracket.
It's information on how the content was generated, which I think in general is quite good and useful. Like knowing when it was generated and with what process, and maybe some information like if you have a link to a GitHub repo or something on the generation process. I think people find that quite useful. In previous testing sessions we've done where we got feedback, we definitely got a lot of feedback from people. People always could use more metadata, and they almost want to know more context on a document. So, and sometimes documents kind of get separated from their original context for various reasons, and then it's kind of good to know. So you may even want to say more explicitly that this is like related to the archive. I mean, I'm sure maybe it's on the page somewhere.
No next annotation.
Let's try to find.
Find dialog. Type that.
ARXCIV.
Find error dialog text quote arxiv quote investigating VCubing as a reconstruction of.
Go back up the page.
Find error dialog text quote arxiv
I guess I'm not
VCubing.
seeing. Let's
Find
see the
selection.
regular ARX.
No result.
Yeah.
Arxiv.
It looks like there's no archive on the page, so I guess just like give yourself some credit and put it on the page. I mean, I know it'll be obvious because it'll be on the page, but sometimes people do weird things like they save PDFs and they. I don't know. It's kind of useful to have it in the document itself sometimes. Okay. I want to go back to the end, so I'm going to go back to that list.
List with 98 items left. Correct content info landmark generated on button open issue.
Okay, so
beta.
Button open issue beta.
Beta. So
the last thing on the page is beta. Oh, so that's why it was saying beta when I skipped to the bottom. I thought it was doing something weird, but actually it's just saying that this is a beta. This is a beta page. So that actually makes a lot of sense. And I don't have any issue with that. I was just momentarily confused. Let's try submitting an issue.
Button open issue.
It seems like this is a button. I'm just curious if there are any other buttons on the page, so I'm gonna.
No previous button. No next button.
Okay, so it looks like this is the only button on the page. So we can actually do something like, if I go to the top.
Beta. Heading level 1 investigating.
And then I could skip all the way to give feedback.
Open issue button.
By pressing B. So that's pretty cool. Maybe I will submit, since I think the most concrete issue we've encountered here, I mean, it seems like a pretty well-formatted document in general. The most concrete issue I have is the heading level 6 being the abstract. So I'm going to go ahead and submit an issue saying that, hey, the abstract is at heading level 6. It should probably be heading level 2. So I'm on the button.
No next button. No previous button.
I'm going to go ahead and activate it.
Dialog. Heading level 5 open GitHub issue.
So okay, great. So it said dialogue, so that's correct. Now if it's we're looking at a dialogue, and it looks like using low vision, the page is sort of visible behind it. So the thing I always check for in these circumstances is, can you, and this is often a problem that you encounter, does the dialogue properly, capture the screen, or can you kind of like see beyond the selected dialogue with the screen reader, which you don't actually want to do. Like when the dialogue pops up, you really just want to be interacting with the dialogue. So let's test that out.
Heading level 5 open GitHub issue.
So it's heading level 5 open GitHub issue. Let's see if there's anything before that.
Heading level 5 open GitHub. Heading level 5 open GitHub issue.
So I'm not poking down into anything else. Let's just quickly go through the whole. Let's just read everything on this dialogue, actually.
Heading level 5 open GitHub issue. Button close. Warning : issue reports will be publicly available on GitHub, including the content of an unannounced submission.
Warning.
Description : edit required multi-line spelling error FDF out of edit. Button submit without GitHub. Button submit in GitHub.
Looks like spelling. There's already a spelling error in it. I wonder if that's because I typed something in. Yeah, maybe I opened it previously when I was opening the page initially. So that might be me. And then at the end, it seems like it's completely capturing the screen, so we can't access the previous page from this page, from this dialogue, which is exactly what you want. So that's great.
Button submit in GitHub.
And actually,
button submit in GitHub.
Sometimes a bit of a challenge to implement. So kudos. And then we have a button to submit. I don't want to see what other buttons we have.
Submit without GitHub button.
We have a submit without GitHub, which may open an email or something. I can test that out later.
Submit in GitHub button.
Submit in GitHub. That's the one I'm going to try.
Submit without GitHub button. Close button.
And close. Hopefully I'm logged into GitHub, but I guess we'll see. GitHub now has two-factor authentication. So
submit without GitHub button.
Okay. Submit without GitHub. Submit. Let's write some dialogue.
Button open issue.
So is that a form? Let's check if it's a form.
No previous form field. No next form field.
So it looks like it's not a form. So
no previous form field.
It's not picking
no
up
next
on
form
a
field.
form.
Content info and mark generated on adult list with 98 items. 1 and
Oh,
10.
I've somehow managed to have skipped away from the
content info and mark LATX left bracket logo right bracket link.
So I'm actually off this dialogue. So somehow I did escape from the dialogue. I wonder if I could replicate that.
Open issue button.
Open issue. What happens if I do the open
dialogue
issue?
button submit without GitHub.
So when I do, I'm back at the dialogue. And if I do look for forms.
Submit in GitHub button. No next form field. Submit without GitHub button. Description : edit required multi-line spelling error FDF.
Okay, so the form, it is working with the forms. It is set up as a form, so that's good. And now let's go ahead and write.
Description : edit required multi-line spelling error FDF.
So I navigated to this with the F key in browse mode just to see if it was properly set up as a form field. That seems
FDF select F unselected.
So let's go ahead and write something. I'm gonna write it in my text editor.
Videos row 1 column OBS 20 VLC media player settings row 2 column 1. Obs where am Emacs at Patrick Emacs at Patrick coming.
Emacs. And then
new line.
Okay, so I'm gonna say
use +, -0 for further adjustment.
Just in case this doesn't go straight to the beta, in the HTML in the beta of the HTML archive document, it looks like the abstract heading
quotes A B S T R A C T quotes abstract H E D F G
heading
heading
after the title is
S
a H6
H6
not
LT
not well actually let's say
comma not H6
given the layout of the page it should probably be something like a well let's just be less indefinite be a H2
element in the beta of the HTML arxiv document it looks like the element
given that the references heading is also a H2. It seems to me like the references is the most analogous to it. So, all right. Let's go ahead and submit that.
In the beta of the HTML arxiv document, it looks like the abstract heading after the title is AH6. Given the layout of the page, it should probably be a H2 element, given that the references heading is also AH2.
It's an H6? I don't know. Whatever.
In the beta of the HTML arxiv document, it looks like the abstract heading after the title is AH6. Given the layout of the page, it should probably be a H2 element, given that the references heading is also AH2.
Okay. Go ahead and paste it in.
Submit without GitHub button. Submit in GitHub button.
Submit in GitHub. And probably it's going to make me log in. If that's the case, I'll pause the recording.
Untitled -Google main landmark. Username or email address edit blank.
Okay.
Password edit protected. Sign in button. 2-factor authentication middle
Okay.
GitHub
I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording
edit blank.
because, you know, whatever. I have to play around with my phone. Okay, and we're back. Let's see. So we have, we're logged in. With their issues all set up. Unfortunately, I have to use two-factor authentication now, so I'm working on a security open source project. So, look, I'm going to navigate a little bit in GitHub here with NVDA.
Graphic link.
Okay, so that's me, my graphic.
Title edit required selected. Improve article : 2307.1102.5v1.
Improve article. That sounds pretty general. Let's go ahead and replace it with
one unselected.
Let's call it change H6 abstract heading to H2. And then I'll also put it in parentheses improve article, just in case that's useful. That's the
Article.
default that they gave us.
Tab control, right tab selected 1. Composition toolbar, heading button and head. Comment body edit multi-line number describe the issue.
Okay, let's go ahead and...
Line feed. Blank. Star description star colon. In the meter of the HTML spelling error arxiv document, it looks like the quote abstract quote heading after the title is H6, given the layout of the page. It should probably be H2 element, given that the references heading is also H2 blank. Feel free to attach a screenshot left parent or document right parent link below colon.
Feel free to attach a screenshot. I don't need to include that. I don't think. Yeah.
Line feeds. Feel free to attach a screenshot left parent or document. Line feeds. Number autofill data dash. Please do not edit below this line unselected.
Please do not edit below this line, so I won't. Okay.
Attach files by dragging and dropping. Selecting or pasting them dot colon. No file chosen button. Styling with Markdown is supported link.
Styling with Markdown is supported.
Styling with Markdown is supported link. Submit new issue button.
Submit new issue. Very exciting.
Change H6 abstract heading to H2 left parent improve article right parent middle dot issue number 16 middle dot arxiv slash HTML line.
And maybe when I upload this video, I will also create an issue and saying I've uploaded the video and link it. And I will probably also create an issue for that. The other small item, which is maybe, to consider making the whole citation a link, but that's extremely minor. But I'll do it off video. Okay. I want to say that's most of what I wanted to accomplish.
Investigating VTubing as a
so I did want to check out the sidebar because I don't really know what it is.
When asked to generated on Fragile 2114 colon 52
oh, that's
colon
where that
32,023 by.
Interesting.
Generated on Fragile 21 generated on Fragile T. XML. Generated on generated on
I wonder if that's LaTeX. If that's an aside. It probably should be an aside since it's off to the side. So there's an HTML element called an aside. So I'm gonna remember what the
generated on Fragile 2114 colon 50. Generated on Fragile 2114 colon 52 colon 32.
Let's go look. Just look for
new
generated
colon
on.
HTTPS colon.
Generated on.
Result 1 of 1. On result 1 of 1.
Generated on and what would we have?
Less meta, less head greater. Less meta. Less dash generated on Fragile 2114 colon 52 colon 32,000 less title greater.
Title.
Investigating VTubing as a reconstruction of streamer self-presentation colon and less dash generated on Fragile 2114 colon 50. Investigating VTubing as a reconstruction.
Sound seems like it doesn't have its own element. I wonder what it actually is.
Less meta. Less dash generated on Fragile 2114 colon 52 colon 32,023 by TXT content. href. Less meta. Content. Less meta. Less dash generated on Fragile.
So is there not another?
Generated. Result 1 of.
Let's see.
Result 1. Generate. Result 2 of 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Conference on levy left parent to bid dot bid less LTX and bid.
Zoom out. So there's another instance of generated.
LTX conference in LTX in LTX and LTX and font line italic. In user dash generated gaming live dash streams in. Result 3 of 4.
That's part of the content.
In dash live stream wiki colon. NA live streams to collaboratively generate archival documentation for effective. Result 4 of 4. The many faces of Facebook generated on Fragile 2114 colon 52 colon 32,023 by.
Okay, this is what I wanted, so let's see what the element is.
Less slash foot, less equal class. Equal to LTX quote greater. LTX on page line footer.
Looks like it's a footer. Wait, that's not the class.
Class. Less footer. Less footer. Less slash article greater.
Oh, it's
less article. Less footer. Less class.
Article's not the worst choice.
Less slash div greater. Less foot. Less div. Less footer.
It looks like it's the footer.
LTX on page line footer. LT less div.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like the article ends here and then the footer. I feel like it's less, it's off to the side, so maybe it's an aside, but it did seem kind of fine. Like when I was just navigating the page, in blind mode, I would have just said that's the footer, and it makes sense for it to be in the footer. So I really don't object to that. It's a little confusing only because I'm using kind of things
generated on Fragile
side, which usually means that it's an aside. But I think it's actually pretty normal footer style content. Is this space used for anything else? It does seem like kind of a waste of space.
The observation of the 7 channels were assigned to 4 researchers left parent.
But maybe in the future you'll want to use the sidebar for inline, footnotes or something like that. Like kind of like, Edward Tufte kind of a situation. So that makes sense to me. So if you actually are going to use that sidebar for something like inline footnotes, then totally get it. If it was like this and there was only this, then maybe it makes sense to move the footer down to the end and actually be a footer at the end. Yeah, make it down here somewhere. Broadly speaking, I would say this is really good. I could see it getting more complicated when more elements are added. You know, like if you have, the usual archive navigation, and then you would need like a skip to content button. Maybe if you had, inline footnotes, or one thing that we don't really see here are two things that you often see, or maybe three things. One being tables, which is not really that challenging, but it still needs to implement it correctly. The next being graphics and images, that require alt text, which is usually kind of the author needs to do that, so that it's kind of difficult to handle. And then the last being equations. So those are all challenging things to address, but I look forward to seeing how you guys tackle those. And I'm happy to look at another version of this. So thank you very much. I will share this video with you guys. Have a good one.